Hello and welcome to another AGK tutorial, and I'm going to continue on from my tile editor that I was working on last time. Now I must admit it's a little bit awkward to keep working on code and just go back, to go back to the code and tell you what I've changed. I'm not used to working that way. I'm used to just messing around coding, not remembering what I've done, as particularly just going through it. So this is a little awkward for me, but I'll do my best. Right, now I've tried to sort of mark the parts that I've changed. You'll notice that before it was called properties, now I've changed it to image because it just makes more sense. It's not going to be a properties file. A properties file sort of says it's going to have several different properties, but it's not. It's just this is the image number now, because that's what I've changed. I've changed it so that this editor can now load in a tiled image. Now just to show you what I'm doing besides that, I mean obviously I've changed that to image, and then that's the first change in the code here. But before we do that, let's just show you my image file, and there you go. Artistically incredible, you can see, but I've created basically a left and a right and a middle platform. Obviously you can repeat this one as many times as you want to make it a bigger platform, and these parts here will link onto this part because it's slightly thinner than a standard tile, and these parts here will basically allow you to use sort of that texture there and link in. So if you was to, I don't know, let's have a look at my no, go off that selection. So that tile there, if I wanted it to join down there, I can use these instead. So I could sort of put that one there. Let's just that, plop it down, or try to plop it down because it's not working. Oh yeah, yeah. But you can see sort of what I mean. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's where it needs to go. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. Here's me just being stupid. And there we go. Plop that there. And then if we get this, we can plop that down there, and it sort of matches it. I'm not artistic. Well, that's I'm not particularly. It's not my greatest skill. I can do some graphics, but I have to spend a lot longer than what I've done doing these. So that's just sort of the image. Let's just get rid of that. That's no good. We don't want any of that. So basically at the top, and those will all join up to this, and then those allow you to just plop them there. But to be honest, I'm not even going to bother using them at the moment. Back to the program. I'm setting current. That's going to be your cursor ID. So where you move your mouse, it's going to be on current. Let me just load up the program, show you the difference. There you go. Move my cursor around and it now shows you the image that's selected, and that's the one that's going to be plonked down whenever you do it. So plonk, 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 and if you press the plus key, it'll take you to the next one. So you can sort of extend that. Plus key again, that takes you to the next one. Plus key again. There we go. That would take you to that one. It's yeah. Again, that gives me the full tile, so I can fill those in. And then plus again, and I've got that one. And plus again, and then I've got these tiles here that I showed you before. Plus again, and it takes me to that. Plus again. So you can see, apart from the fact I've just deleted that, minus, minus, minus. There we go. You can see you can make something reasonably well. Just delete those. So that's a bit more useful than the basic editor I showed you before. Clear that. Just lower the screen I made earlier, and there you go. So the tiles I've got, you can sort of do little platforms. Again, this editor really was designed primarily for a one-screen platform type game, something like Manic Mine or Jet Set Willy, Well, you just have one screen at a time. It doesn't scroll or anything like that. I can change it to make it scroll. It will take a fair bit of alteration. I don't know. It's difficult for me to go through it. I can definitely get the program to do it, but then me going back and telling you what I've exactly changed is quite complicated. So we'll see. We'll see whether I carry on with that or not. But I just wanted to show you how to use images and get your different images in there and saved and loaded in, instead of having just the colour change, because it's not quite as simple as you would think. Let's close that. Right, so current equals 1, that's basically the first image of the cursor, which is going to be frame 1. You don't want anything else. Create a sprite, sets the animation, 32 by 32 is the size, 8 is the number of frames. So if I go back to that, you can see it's 8 frames across. So there's 8 potential frames, plenty of room for more frames, and this is only a fairly small image. I think it's 256 by 256. So considering you go to 1024 by 1024, you've got a lot of choice for tiles for your level. And that's just one image, so that'll keep your draw count down as well, which is always useful for speed. Right, back up we go. So we go, set the sprite animation, sprite depth. I'm just setting it to the default depth straight in front of your screen, so the cursor's always showing, else it'll hide underneath the sprites as you print them up. So when you move to somewhere else, you can't see what you're doing. So that's all I did that for. Just put a little space there, it's nicer. You can see I put these here. Just every time I've changed something, I've put these in so I can see what I'm doing, and it's easier for you to see what parts of the change, of course. That's setting the cursor position, because I wasn't doing anything like that before. It's positioning the cursor sprite, which I've made there, by MX and MY, which is being set here, and times grid, which is 32. So that puts it, that's what grids it straight in position for you. And then in control, the first thing I've changed is, instead of changing colours and things like that, I've added in the image which it's loading up, which is always one image at the moment, just one image, backdrop tiles, which I create there by loading it up. And then the important thing is I'm setting the sprite animation. Now that's 32 by 32, which is the size of the tiles I've created, and 8 frames, but obviously you can go up as high as you want, well, as far as the image allows, but I've just set it for the first 8 tiles across here for now. But obviously, like I say, you've got quite a few frames just on this image alone that you could increase to, and that's probably more than enough for most, especially one screen level. If you're doing a scrolling level, perhaps you may need more than that, but even then, it's still a good amount. You get away with that, unless you've got complicated graphics. Right, so yeah, so I'm setting the sprite image to the backdrop tiles. The animation is being just set automatically. That's just setting the amount of animation frames and the size of it, and then that sets the sprite frame, which is current, which is 1. But you can increase that. That increases a bit later on. You can up and down that with the plus and minus keys, and that also then sets the map, which is the array that you're saving, to current, which is giving it the image. So basically, whatever frame you choose, you'll remember for loading later on. Here in the next bit, I've just changed this a little bit. I've got rid of the sprite hit colour, rem that out. And I'm setting the sprite frame instead. That's just for, obviously that's for when you click something and it doesn't exist, and that's when you click something when it already exists. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can force someone to have to delete the tile before they can place it down, but that's just makes the editor a little bit more useful. You can just plonk over the top. You don't have to worry about deleting if you don't want. And again, that's setting the array image to equal the same tile, so it remembers what you've done. These two little bits of code here basically are just increasing and decreasing the current tile, which is your cursor tile. If it's greater than 8, it makes it 1, and if it's less than or equal to 0, it equals 8. Basically that just makes sure that it's going to keep within the right range. Obviously, as you increase the amount of tiles in the animation, you want to increase that to match. Right, the only other thing you really have to change, you could leave the load, or rather the save and the init needs to be pretty much the same. I could probably take a couple of these bits out, the set sprite colour and that, because it's not really useful anymore, but I haven't bothered. The save's exactly the same, because it's not changing the data. I haven't altered, and I've not increased the amount of things, I've just changed properties to image. You need to change that all through the code, just globally file replace. So basically at the start, I'll get back to the start with type, that would have been properties, so you just highlight it, copy it, or rather, well, no, you don't need it, just highlight that, copy it, sorry, and then go to find, replace, and then in there you would replace image, or rather properties, with image, and then it'll change all of them when you replace it. So back down. So yeah, in the load section, you can see all I've had to change really is all the image stuff again. It didn't have any image stuff in before, so you just need to add that in. So that's all the same as standard, and then you need to set the sprite image to the backdrop tiles, which is the only image number. I'm using one image for this, remember. You could complicate matters by making them more than one, but for now, and for most games, you just need one image, and it'll work fine. You can go up to 1024 by 1024 image. That's a lot of tiles, at least at 32 by 32. You may have to alter things if you wanted 64 by 64, or definitely wanted 128 by 128 tiles. But I can't see you going much higher than that really. And that there sets the animation file to work, because obviously when it's loading up the sprite, it's creating a sprite here, it needs to know what the image is, it needs to know what the animations are, because it's an animated image. And then here it just sets the sprite frame to what sprite ID was set, which is what the sprite frame is. Simple as that. I've remmed out a couple of these bits because it doesn't need it anymore. It really doesn't need to check if mapx, y.image equals 1. It just needs to set the sprite frame to the sprite ID. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I've missed anything. I'll just quickly scroll through the code again so you can see it all. So I've already uploaded the code onto the forums, so it should be just a simple case of editing a few things around to get this to work. And like I say, there you go. We'll load that up and you can just plonk things about as you want. Plus and minus keys change it. There you go. Oops. Helps if you do the right way, blah 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 blah. And you can see it works nicely. Apart from the fact I'm taking ages to find the frame. Save that, clear, load, and there we go. Simple as that. So that's making it a lot more usable for you. You can actually get some graphics in there. I may continue this particular editor and try and get it scrolling. I'm not certain. I didn't design it with that in mind, but I can easily change it to work with that, but it's going to be quite a bit of changes. I mean, just as a sort of preview, I mean, there we go, there's the array. Basically the array is set to the exact screen size at the moment. I'd have to alter that, I'd have to increase the size of the array so you could go further across, whichever way you want to go, and then sort of make markers for where you start and where you're ending for that particular screen, and then alter it as you're moving along. So you'd have a big array and you'd sort of be reading through that array to get all your scrolling working. But like I say, I'll probably get onto that. Like I say, I'm not entirely certain. I might just do a totally different program to generate that. That might be easier. But I hope it helped. If you like this, rate and subscribe, or one or the other. Until next time, I'll catch you later.